Welcome. Let me make sure my mic is. I didn't check it this time. Welcome into another edition of Prime Sports World. I'm of course your host David. I'm playing up and right there is my co-host Mr. T.J. Hopkins. And on today's episode of the Prime, we're going to be breaking down the Philadelphia Eagles and getting into their season preview as we try to predict what we think the reigning NFC champions are going to be like in 2023. But before we get into that, I just want to give a somber moment here and just kind of announce my thoughts and prayers out to the family and friends of Alex Collins, former NFL running back who tragically passed away at some point today. Most recently played in the CFL as a part of the Memphis Shipmen or the USFL in 2023, but he played for the Seattle Seahawks and Baltimore Ravens throughout his NFL career. A solid running back, gone way too soon. He was only 28 years old out of the University of Arkansas. So we just want to give our thoughts and prayers out to his family and his friends, as I'm sure they're going through a tough time. No details surrounding his death have been released at this time. But yeah, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we try to transition from that, talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. Welcome to the show, TJ.
Shut up. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, let's talk about Philadelphia. Let's just jump right into it. First, one of the things I think is not being talked about enough when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you think there'll be an impact on the fact that they're replacing both coordinators? Basically, both of them got hired days after the Super Bowl, after they lost the Super Bowl, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, replacing Jonathan Gano, who was the defensive coordinator of this team up until, obviously, he got the Arizona Cardinals job. And then Shane Steichen, who is now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles for the last two seasons and really had a big part in the rise of Jalen Hurts. What do you think the impact will be of replacing two people? You're basically your two offensive and defensive coaches.
Well, to answer your first question, there's usually some kind of setback, right? We saw Josh Allen this past year without Brian Daboll kind of take a step back, right? The Bears defense, after losing Vic Fangio, what they had in 2018, they couldn't replicate that under Chuck Pagano, right? Josh McDaniels leaves. New England's offense completely falls off the tracks. It's just non-existent. So there's usually some kind of, setback. And if it's usually just one side that you have to, replace. They replaced both. The defensive coordinator pretty much got the Cardinals job like hours after the Super Bowl ended. Like they just like it wasn't even.
Well, he was already heavily rumored to be in the running for this coaching job. And
like,
two days after
like
they lost, 2 days.
He didn't even leave Arizona. He didn't even leave Arizona. He probably had his stuff shipped there during the Super Bowl, like during that whole.
But Shane Steichen also got hired 2 days after the Super Bowl as well. So yeah, they didn't waste any time hiring these guys. Sean Diassi will be the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He spent at least last season. He was the Bears defensive coordinator in 2021. He was the Seattle Seahawks assistant head coach and defensive assistant in 2022. And now he's the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. On the offensive side, Brian Johnson is now their new offensive coordinator. He's familiar with the Philadelphia Eagles. He spent the last two seasons as the quarterbacks coach there in Philadelphia. Also was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach in Florida for basically the last 3 seasons before he ended up in the NFL.
And I understand that, sometimes like, he's quote unquote in the system, but he wasn't calling plays. He wasn't doing that. Like, he still has to somehow, some way make this thing his own, right? Like, you can try to emulate the stuff that Shane Steichen did, but at the same time, you want to make it kind of your own thing, if that makes sense. The good news is the team is stacked, right? Like, it's not like
that takes us to our second point. But yes, this team is stacked in the trenches, in the skill position room, in the defensive backfield. Like this team is straight up stacked from
Like
top to bottom.
they have a good problem to have. It's all right. How do I have a lot of hungry mouths. How do I make sure everybody eats? And kind of the thing that plays a role in that is free agency. Like you lose some guys, you lose some guys that allows
Yeah, they lost a lot of guys in free agency. We'll get to that as well.
other guys on the roster to fill those spots. They got a lot of Georgia Bulldogs on that team
It's
that
basically
could
Georgia North.
right. They couldn't get a lot of playing time because of the guys ahead of them. Now now you're going to be asked to slide right into those roles, and here we go. Is this the best team in the trenches on both? Until somebody say otherwise, like you gotta ask yourself a couple questions. How long does Fletcher Cox? How much more does he have left in him? How much
this is
more?
probably his last season. He signed a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles this season. But yeah, they're front four, and on the defensive side, Brandon Graham, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Josh
Like
Sweat.
both of them, like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. Like I know Brandon Graham's like significantly younger than Fletcher Cox is, but he's been there for a long time. And on the other side, Jason Kelsey is probably it for him. It's also probably it for Lane Johnson.
Nah, I don't know about that.
Lane Johnson's been pretty beat up the last couple
I
of
know,
years.
but he's only 33. I would
What does
be
that
I would
mean?
be. I mean, I don't think he's gonna hang it up. I don't think this is his last season.
It could be. I'm just saying it could be.
Actually, Fletcher Cox is actually younger than Brandon Graham.
No way.
Yeah, Brandon Graham's 35 years old. Fletcher Cox is only 32.
But both of them, like
But
you 32 years old,
but
you already signed on a 1 year. Like you already at that stage of your career where you're on a 1 year deal basis.
so did Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham signed a 1-year deal to stay with the Philadelphia Eagles too. But yeah, they have a couple of young guys like Jordan Davis, who they obviously just drafted. They got Jalen Carter, who they drafted last season. They still have Derek Barnett, who hasn't really panned out as like a first-round pick.
They just got Jalen Carter. What are you talking about last season? They just got Jalen Carter.
I'm talking about Derek Barnett.
No, you said they drafted Jalen Carter last season. They just got him.
Oh, I think
Jalen
I got Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter flipped up. Sorry about that. I'm a human being. I made it
But
clear.
Jordan Davis actually played. Like he can.
I
mean, like
he
that's
got banged up and stuff, but
but talk about a transition though. Talk about a transition. You go from Fletcher Cox to Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter.
But their offensive line, Jordan Mialata, one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Lander Dickerson, a good left guard.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Kelsey, obviously going towards the end of his career. Cam Jurgensen, right guard, really good football player. Right tackle Lane Johnson, arguably one of the best right tackles in the NFL. I'm not sure it's even really that close of a debate when you talk about like this being the best team in the trenches. Yeah, I think they for sure are. Like when you look at they have Hall of Famers like all over their roster at both of those two positions at defensive line and offensive line.
Yeah, Jordan Mailata was a rugby player who got too big to keep playing rugby and switched over to play football. No, seriously, like he used like in his younger days, he was a rugby player, and then he just kept growing, and it's just like, yeah, you're too big to do this.
Yeah, he's 6'8", 365 pounds.
Yeah,
not a lot of 6'8", 365 rugby players out there in the world.
Like that is massive. Like, yeah, no, get your ass on this line and protect the blind side. Period.
And and he's been one of the best left tackles since he's joined the NFL. This is like we're talking about the trenches. Yeah, this is as good as it gets in the NFL.
Yes, I mean, off the top of my head, no, I can't find a group. I can't name on either side. I mean, San Fran, maybe, arguably, on both sides.
I think Philadelphia's offensive line is just better than. Obviously, they have. I think when you talk about offensive linemen, I think San Francisco has the better player. But I think as a whole, I think Philly's offensive line is better. Like Trent Williams is the best offensive lineman in the NFL. Period.
All right. So, and then who they got at center? Who the Niners? We'll get to the Niners, but I don't know. Like if you want to say that if Niner Gang want to say they got the best front on both sides, it's not like you can't say you're crazy. No, they
Yeah,
have legit.
the argument's certainly there, but for pound to pound, player to player, I think the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the trenches in the NFL. Moving on from there, let's talk about Jalen Hurts. Obviously, got the big contract extension in the offseason. But what's the next step for him as a football player? He's increased his passing yards in every single season this as a pro. Went from 1,000 yards his first season, 3,100, second season, 3,700, this most recent season, 26, 16, 22 touchdowns, got that completion percentage all the way up to 66.5. His rushing yards has kind of stayed steady, although he did punch in 13 on the ground. What is the next step for Jalen Hurts as he moves, as he goes into that big contract? What's the next step for him and this offense eventually?
Well, prove it wasn't a one-off. Do it again. It's really that simple. Like I understand. Like part of his struggles early on in his NFL career was he never, and like even in college, he never stayed in the same system for more than a year. Because like wherever, like even in college, his offensive coordinators left to get head coaching jobs elsewhere. He goes to Oklahoma. He was only there for a year, so he goes to Oklahoma. He's only there. He's under why is his name escaping me? He's coaching USC now. It'll come back to me. But he was only there. He was only there under him for a year. Then he gets drafted, and then he goes through the early stages in Philly because that was ugly. Because you got
is it Lincoln? Is his first name Lincoln? No.
Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah, there we go. Lincoln Riley. We come to us. Do
it. So like he goes to Philly and there's question marks surrounded him because like he's a second round draft pick, and everybody's like, I don't know. He can't really throw the ball like he needs to at the NFL level. Because let's be honest, everybody gives Ohio State quarterbacks hell. Let's not act like Oklahoma quarterbacks have really panned out. Like they throwing the ball.
They haven't.
Like come on, like let's keep it 100. Call a spade a spade. Let's do that. So now you're kind of back to like not unfamiliar territory because now it's going to be somewhat of a new system.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've put that work in like we've believed you have, you're gonna get to a point where it doesn't matter who's calling the plays or what the scheme is, you're gonna do what you do and handle your business. Like Pat Mahomes has had Andy Reid or Matt Nagy in quotation marks to Eric Bieniemy, Matt Nagy again, and so on and so forth. All right, like Dak Prescott has had Mike, like he has Mike McCarthy now, but he had Kellen Moore.
4 years in a row, something like that.
4 years. Basically. So it's if he's put that work in, it shouldn't be that much of a transition. Like, he should be fine.
And he's shown throughout his career that, like, even in college, that he's willing to put the work in. Like, this isn't a guy who ever gets accusations. Like, he's not like some other quarterbacks who are accused of not watching film and like all this other stuff. Like Jalen Hurts puts the work in. He knows like he's earned the contract he has because of the work he's put in. I do have a slight concern with like the wide receiver 3 on this roster with Quez Watkins being wide receiver 3. I think he's not like he's okay, but like they're going to be carried a lot by their number 1, their number 2, and their tight end. And they're going to expect a lot of Rashad Penny, a guy who's rarely healthy. DeAndre Swift, the same kind of idea. He's had a hard time staying healthy, which is why he's no longer in Detroit. Rashad Penny too, like he's no longer in Seattle because he can't stay healthy either. Jalen Hurts has proven that he continues to put in work. He's gotten better every single season. I think it's unrealistic to think he's going to all of a sudden start throwing for 30 touchdowns a year. But we're talking about 25. We're talking about 4,000 passing yards. We're talking about keeping the 700-ish rushing yards with 13 on the ground, 12 on the ground. Jalen Hurts is going to put up big numbers. I would like to see the 66% completion percentage, get that closer to 70. But as long as he continues putting the work, I don't think anybody questions his work ethic. He's going to be good. And that's just got to be the development. Like, you just got to work with the stuff you have in front of you.
And Also, your other saving grace is the NFC has probably never been weaker,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
it's like, hey, it is what. So you pretty much got
I
at
mean,
least
Philadelphia is a lock for a playoff spot, like basically no matter what.
yeah, like, and you got
Like
at
even if
least
it's in the wild card.
right. You have at least I ain't gonna call it a cakewalk, but you gotta ease on down the road vibe going on to at least the NFC Championship. Like the only way you don't make it that far is if you run into the Niners prematurely. Like if you play
Yeah.
them in like the divisional, or you play the Cowboys in the divisional, and so on and so forth. Like them, or yeah, we'll get to their schedule in a little bit.
Yeah. Moving on from the storyline, let's talk about their draft. Obviously, they took two Georgia Bulldogs in the first round with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, defensive tackle and edge, respectively. They took Siler Steen, offensive tackle out of Alabama, Sidney Brown, the safety out of Illinois. Then they kind of stole Keely Ringo,
Keely
cornerback
Ringo.
out of Georgia. A lot of people had him as a potential first round pick. They get him in round 4. Tanner McKee. Just another depth position at the quarterback, since you now can take 3 on your roster out of Stanford, and Moro Ojomoa, defensive tackle out of Texas.
So you could have always kept 3 quarterbacks on your roster. Teams just
Yeah,
get
but
good
now,
because
but now you can keep a third emergency quarterback that doesn't count against your 53.
no, that's different. That's a whole different stipulation. I'm saying teams could have always
Yeah,
kept three
I know.
quarterbacks on the roster. They just chose not to because they follow fads.
Yeah,
They follow trends.
I'm not aware of that. I'm just letting you know. They also have Ian Book on their roster. I figured Izzy would like to know that.
Practice squad. That's exactly who he is.
Anyway, so yeah, Jalen Carter, one of the more polarizing players in this year's draft. After dealing with all of the stuff going on off the field, he didn't really show out well in the combine. He also didn't show out well at the Georgia Pro Day. But when this guy's on the football field, he's as good as it gets at the defensive tackle position, and was arguably the best player in this draft. To get him in 9 is pretty solid value, especially with Javon Hargrave now walking out the door, heading over to San Francisco. He joins teammates Jacoby Dean, Jordan Davis. Both those guys expect to take major steps. And if you're like you're worried about Jalen Carter, the best thing you can do is put him around former players that he's comfortable with, like Georgia Bulldogs. Like this roster's full of them from top to bottom.
And it's a mature setting. So you got vets on that team, i.e., we just talked about a Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett, a Brandon Graham, a Lane Johnson, a Jason Kelsey, a Jordan Mayala. Like, hey, bro, like you kind of got a bad rap about you right now. So you come in, keep your head down, go to work, don't make no noise unless it's on the field, right? Unless you're just making the play on the field. You want to get to a point um, where the owner, GM, and the coach, when they go to sleep at night, they can turn their phone off and they ain't got to worry about getting a call or a notification about Jalen Carter. And I hate that,
Outside of that one incident, I mean, he's really never been a
but
guy
that's
who gets
all.
in trouble.
But how many times have we seen that? That's all it takes is one.
I know.
All it takes is one. So, and that's messed up. But hey, that's the nature of the game right now.
Yeah.
The NFL stands for not for long. If teams feel like you are a detriment to the team, they have no issue getting rid of you. They don't care what they do not care.
Yeah. If you're not producing on the football field, and if you're detrimental to what they're trying to get is success, it doesn't matter if you're a first round pick. They'll cut your losses, and you'll no longer be on that team.
You'll be like, hey man, we missed the boat on this, and we was wrong.
Yep. And the Eagles were the one team that could afford to take that kind of swing, right? Because they had 2 first-round picks in this year's draft. They're already a team that's loaded all over the place. They didn't really have any glaring needs even going into this draft, which is why they were so hard to mock when we did mock drafts for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like I hadn't, like most people didn't know what they were going to do. Like Jalen Carter falls to them. This is a perfect place for him to go. It's a perfect scenario, perfect situation. It just lose all of the distractions that comes with it. And Jalen Carter, I mean, we haven't heard not a peep. well, anything Jalen Carter's been doing he's been a
Like,
model
yeah,
citizen as far as I can
we
tell.
haven't heard of like the whole thing that we heard about the combine. He's out of shape. Pro day, he's out of shape. Ain't heard nothing about him being out of shape since he's been in training camp.
Yep. Moving on to Nolan Smith, a little undersized for the outside linebacker, 238 pounds, but he has all the quickness in the world. Ran a 4.39 in the 40-yard dash. Many people thought that he would be a top 20 pick. He was not. Falls to 30 to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's just another guy that gives you some edge pressures. You can never have too many of those guys, pass rushers.
You say a little undersized for the edge spot. That's the game now. Like
True.
True. Like that's the game now. Like it is. Like now I think he one of those dudes that it's like you gotta find rotational spots for him because I think they pretty set at the edge. You got Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick. You got
Josh Sweat,
Josh. So it's like, where are you going to play him at?
Well, I think he can become a situational player, at least as a rookie. I'd probably play him, when you give breaks to Hassan Reddick, you probably give, or you could even, run him in certain sweats where you take Josh Sweat off the football field, potentially, maybe two. Ooh.
Maybe
they'll find an opportunity to play anybody can get pressure on the quarterback. I think you're going to want to play those guys. Then the guard out of Alabama. You just keep investing in the trenches over and over again. Cam Jurgens is he's the starting right guard, but maybe this guy could push him a little bit in the third round. Someone you're probably pretty high on, the safety out of Illinois, Sidney Brown, first team All Big Ten selection. He had 6 picks and 7 pass deflections in one season, 2022. Fills a major need with C.J. Gardner-Johnson now playing in Philadelphia or in Detroit.
Yeah, that's a steal. It depends on who you ask. To me, that's a steal. Like to get Sidney Brown, who is that Illinois defense was not talked about enough because they were just loaded. You got Devon Witherspoon, he goes to Seattle in the first round. Sidney Brown, and it's just, what's his name from a year ago, also in Detroit. Kirby, what is his name? His name's escaping, but it'll come back to me. But he could definitely fill in right away. He could definitely start right away.
Kirby Smart?
No, that's the coach.
Hold on.
That's the.
I'll try to figure it out.
I think Kirby is his last name. And I don't know why. I don't know why Keelan Ringo fell. Yeah, I don't know why he fell. That one ain't making sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't he's not undersized. Like I don't really understand why he fell. They traded back up to get this guy. Ran a 4.36 in the 40-yard dash. Tied for the fifth fastest.
Kirby Joseph. That's his name.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. He had a pair of picks and 7 pass breakups for the Bulldogs last season. If you get this guy in the 4th round is an absolute steal. Tanner McKee, I mean, I don't really want. I don't know, 6'6", 231. He's just another depth pick at the quarterback position. And then defensive end. Out of Texas, Mora Ojomoa. 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks in 12 games last season at Texas. 6'3", 292 pounds. I don't know if he'll make the team or not, but he's a for sure special teamer probably.
Okay, well, let me ask you this: when have you ever seen a defensive tackle on special teams?
He's a defensive end, man. But yeah, he probably won't play special teams. I guess he won't play special teams either. I don't know. I'm just trying to see if he can make the roster. Trying to help a guy out, man. I'm not gonna be like, oh, you're not gonna make the team. I'm not doing that.
You can say I've never seen a defensive tackle on special teams. Like that's just me though.
They're gonna make an exception for him.
Depending on the formation, like if it's a field goal, then more power to them.
You remember that? Did you look at that stat I sent you guys the other day about Wes Welker?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, so did you know that Wes Welker kicked a field goal and kicked a field goal and an extra point, and he had a kickoff, recorded an NFL kickoff before he ever caught a pass in the NFL?
Oh damn, no, I didn't. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, right. That's one of those wild stats that you feel like isn't true. But anyways, back to
Tyler
Philadelphia.
Tyler Steen, is he a what tackle? What's is he both?
So
Can he play
he's
both?
gonna play guard probably in the NFL. They have him. So I take all of the draft classes from Football Network. Pro Football Network is where I get all the draft classes. But ESPN actually has him listed as a guard. So you probably will play guard at the next level.
Who's he?
But he did play both while he was at
Who's he
guard and
behind?
tackle. Cam Jurgens is the current starting right guard for this team right now for the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's tough. Well, unless you're like what's his name? Unless you're like Joey Mailata or Lane Johnson, I think you should be able to be that versatile. Like if to play all three positions on the interior. That is. Overall, this is an A draft class.
I agree with
Like
you. I think it's
their first, obviously, like their first 1, 2, 3, their first 5 picks is just guys that they're going to be key contributors in some way.
should be.
Maybe
This might be the best.
4 out of the 5.
This might be the best draft of the bunch that we've covered so far since we doing the season previews. This is an A+ for me. I think getting Jalen Carr and Nolan Smith, getting Skeely Ringo is a steal. We're not even really factoring the fact that they traded one of their picks for DeAndre Swift, which I also love.
Right.
But was a 5th round pick. Like I love that move. This is A+. Moving on from there, let's talk about their notable additions roster shakeup. And this is kind of what happens when you go to the Super Bowl. Your roster gets gutted a little bit. Obviously, I just mentioned they added DeAndre Swift in that trade. I think they gave up a 5th round pick, but the departures, big names here. Javon Hargrave had his best season as an NFL player last season. I think he had 12 sacks. Andre Dillard was a swing tackle, was supposed to be the heir apparent to Lane Johnson there, but then he got banged up and never really kind of gained that form and that position back. He's now in Tennessee. TJ Edwards is now a Chicago Bear, who had a fantastic season last year as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a steal when they traded for him last year. Now he's in Detroit. Kaiser White, a good football player. Miles Sanders, a good running back, is now playing in Carolina. And Isaac Somalio is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers as he played guard for this team. Most recently.
Probably got more players gone, but you couldn't fit them all on the graphic.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, I didn't include Robert Quinn, Dominican Sue, Linval Joseph. I also did not include players that are coming in. Greedy Williams has been kind of a bit of a bust. Zach Williams, Zach Cunningham, Miles Jack, Rashad Penny, who I talked about a little bit when we were talking about running backs earlier. Obviously, they lost Gardner Minshew, which is what it is.
Well, I actually think that's a big loss. Like that's a more than capable backup.
I mean, they added Marcus Mariota to be that guy.
Yeah. Say what you want about Mariota. Obviously, like it's the departures. Like Javon Hargrave was a starter for this team. T.J. Edwards, you mentioned how good he was. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a pest. He is known for drawing unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on the opposing players because he just runs his mouth and he gets in the other team's head. Like remember the fight he had against the Bears when he was on the Saints, Javon, that's who he is. That's what he does. Kazir White, losing him is Miles Sanders is
Yeah, I mean, he was their best running back last season. I think they've kind of upgraded that position with DeAndre Swift. I will be interested to see what Miles Sanders does in Carolina. My bad about Javon Hargrave. Actually only had 11 sacks last season. But still his best season as a pro by far.
Well, I'm curious as to what DeAndre Swift does for the Eagles because while he is in a better scheme and whatnot, Miles Sanders did produce for them.
Yep.
All right, so I'm not going to be quick to call getting DeAndre Swift and losing Miles Sanders and replacing him like that replacement an upgrade right now. I can't do that.
I mean, Miles Sanders quietly ran for 1,200 yards last season.
Quietly, bro. Like, how do you quietly run for 1,200 yards?
For sure, he had 11 touchdowns and 1,200 yards last season. Quiet as a cat. Like that's quiet. Like it wasn't quiet in Philly. I know that much. Yeah. But I mean, if you'd asked me how many yards Miles Sanders had last season, I would
You
never
would
in 1,000 years
said
would have said
said
1,200.
1,200.
Yeah,
Like
1,200.
yeah. So like I'm not gonna be quick to call that replacement an upgrade. Like DeAndre, so like you said it. DeAndre Swift is not in Detroit anymore because he couldn't stay on the field. So what are you getting right now? Are you getting like? I mean, like at the end of the day, like if it doesn't pan out, like oh boo hoo, we lost a fifth round pick for
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift. So it's like it's not like it's quote unquote substantial draft capital. And then the other guys like Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, those are just
And it's not even. It's actually a 2025 fourth. I apologize. I had that number wrong.
and
But
the
still,
excuse me, the other guys that you listed, Robert Quinn, Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh, they at their mercenary stage of their career. Like they trying to get in the best situation possible to win a ring and ride off into the sunset. You know, like
well, I mean,
that's
Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, they literally signed like in the middle of the season last year. Like they literally played. They didn't like they want to get another ring and then obviously yes retire.
and then Robert Quinn was traded there
Yeah,
last season.
for a third or second round pick.
Fourth round pick, which turned into what's his name, the receiver out of Cincinnati.
Yeah, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is what happens when you have a team
Yeah,
that goes to the Super Bowl and you pay your quarterback. I mean,
you
this
get gutted.
you kind of get gutted a little bit. You lose a lot of talent. Like I mean, T.J. Edwards is a good football player. C.J. Gardner Johnson is also a good football player. Do I have that? Why do they call him C.J.? Like, what's his middle name?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, yeah, Kaiser White was really good for this team last year too. Miles Sanders obviously was very productive at the running back position for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to be, this is what happens when you go to the Super Bowl. Teams want your players, and that's exactly what happened here. Especially if you have players that are underpaid, they go to places where they get vastly paid.
They get their money.
Yeah, I'm never going to hate on somebody getting their money, but it's tough when you lose this kind of talent. I think this is probably a B minus for when it comes to roster shakeup.
If that, I mean, like I mean, like obviously, like you didn't include the guys that were recently added because that happened like a day or two ago. And
I mentioned them, but I also didn't think they were more worthy of talking about over the guys they lost. But like, I can only really fit so many guys on the graphic. Like,
I also don't really consider those guys like needle movers. Like Miles Jack really hasn't been heard from since that one good year in Jacksonville.
yeah,
Right? Like I'm not saying he hasn't had good seasons because he just hasn't been heard from. Like when they said, "Oh, Miles Jack is signing with the Eagles," I'm like, "Oh, he's still playing." That's what I took that as.
yeah, he played in Pittsburgh last season. But he had
Hey, like, bro,
tackle.
how you a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers and you don't make no noise?
I mean, Pittsburgh, was just there last season, I guess. So, and yeah, Zach Cunningham has been fairly disappointing ever since he was drafted. So,
Is he? Welcome to the show.
well,
Wow,
sure,
yeah. What's going on, fellas? Yeah,
We're
what's
talking
going
about
on,
the
fellas?
roster shakeup for the Philadelphia Eagles right before we get into their schedule. I just gave them
Oh,
a B
okay.
minus for their roster shakeup. I mean, this is what happens when you go to the Super Bowl. You lose some players.
Yeah, there's not much they could do. I mean, those guys that wanted to go out and get paid. I don't blame TJ Edwards for going out and getting his money with Chicago. I don't blame Miles Sanders for going to get his money. But they replaced him with DeAndre Swift, who David absolutely loves. I don't know. I'm not that big of a fan because he's always injured. But last year he seemed to like kind of hit his stride a little bit. He wasn't he's a little healthier than years past. So I kind of got to agree for B. But I mean, this is the Philadelphia Bulldogs, right? They, I mean, you lose CJ Edwards, but I mean, that's why N'Kobe Dean. That's why you drafted N'Kobe Dean from a year ago, right? So they're just basically reloading with the young players that they had. They knew they were going to lose some of those guys. But I'll give it, whatever. It's like a B or a C plus. It really doesn't. DeAndre Swift doesn't really move. They're still a great team. He's not like, oh my God, he's gonna put them over the hump to be Super Bowl champs. Like I just think DeAndre Swift is just a good replacement for Miles Sanders. I mean,
I can't even say that.
That's what I'm saying. I can't even say that because like you said, like I said, he's been relatively had the injury bug.
Izzy, were you watching the show or like just before you came on? Like how many yards do you think Miles Sanders rushed for last season?
Lord, it had to be in between 800 to 1,000.
1,200.
1,200 yards.
1,200 yards? That is the quietest 1,200 yards I've ever heard. Like, dude, that is a quiet 1,200 yards. Wow, I didn't even think he ran for 1,200. I thought it would have been like 999, like 959 or something like that. Yeah,
1,200. He ran for 1,200 yards last season.
And nobody even noticed it, huh? Nobody noticed that he ran for 1,200 yards. Jesus Christ, that's incredible, man. But I'll give it a B. I'll give it a B. All my NFC East people are in here. Hey, hold on. I want to say something. Dallas Cowboy fans. And I'm in a couple of these Dallas Cowboy forum groups where they just always be jumping in on the Packer fan because I'm like one of the only other fans in those groups. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, y'all better stop that nonsense saying that Philadelphia is not a threat to y'all. That needs to go out the window. I'm Dallas Cowboy fans. You need to stop that crap right now because the Philadelphia Eagles are probably gonna win the NFC East. They're probably gonna sweep y'all. They're gonna kick y'all butt. And they're going to probably go back to the NFC Championship game. And that's all I got to say.
Moving on.
Because that's the bottom line. Because Stone Cold said so.
Moving on from that, let's just swing into the schedule. And instead of going game by game, which is how we normally do this, find me the games that Philadelphia does not win. Because when I was putting this together,
they're not going undefeated, David. Stop.
I had a hard time finding that many games that I thought they would lose.
I already told you they lose in the last game of the season to the Giants. I already told you they lose in the last game of the season.
Like without even joking, I think they lose one game on this.
And that's the last game of the season to the Giants.
I think they beat Kansas City. I think they lose to Kansas City in Arrowhead. A rematch.
Knock it off. Like I went to high school with a dude. He an Eagles fan. He like, oh, we're going 16-1. We're gonna lose to the Giants because they gonna rest they guys. Like, bro, first off, you aren't in a position to rest anybody anymore because of the odd number of games. And
they only award one bye now, so
and you only have one bye. So everybody's gonna play the whole 17, barring an injury. Knock that shit off right now. Second, they are not going 16-1. They are not going 16-1.
Not at all.
I mean, they almost went 16-1 last season.
What's almost? Almost ain't doing it.
Weren't they 15-2 last season?
No. Even if they was, almost ain't doing it.
They were 14-3 last season. My apologies.
Almost ain't doing it. Like no.
I think they realistically could go 14-3, 15-2.
We not finna sit. No, we not finna sit and act like the Jets can't beat them. Like Dallas can't get one on them. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Niners, and Seattle can't beat them. Like, bro.
Oh, okay, so
that's 6 losses right there.
So New York. Okay, wait. So New York.
When I'm making predictions here, though, we're going through the I think they beat the first 5 teams they play without a doubt. Like Patriots, Vikings, Buccaneers, Commanders, Rams. They win all 5 of those games, right?
New York's going to be a tough game for them. You know, New York's going to have a very balanced team.
Hey, brother, we
balanced team.
We're not finna sit here and act like the Jets can't beat them. I told my friend, I'm like, bro, there's 6 to 7 losses on this schedule.
And the Jets have a killer defense. I mean,
they just
easily
today.
I can say right now, out of these games, I honestly do believe that's going to be a tough play. That's going to be a tough game for Philly to go into New York and trying to beat Aaron Rodgers and Dalvin Cook now with Breece Hall, with Michael Carter, with Garrett Wilson, with that defense, with whoever the hell else they have on that offense. I mean, that's a tough team.
I mean, there's still major questions about the Jets and their offensive line. I mean, and this is when you have major questions about offensive line. One of the worst teams you want to see is the Philadelphia Eagles.
It's one spot. It is one spot on that offensive line.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers? Do you think
it's the most important position in outside the quarterback?
All right. Now, first off, we're not finna single out one spot on the offensive line that's the most important. As a unit, it's all important.
Do you think?
Do you think Aaron Rodgers is gonna see ghosts? Because we all know what happened last year. He got hurt. And they lost. Jordan Love came in and got a couple touchdowns in garbage time, but he didn't look particularly well against that defense. So I don't know. Dave's got a point.
I mean,
that line in Green Bay was beat up too.
Yeah.
So we're not finna act like Elijah Vera Tucker is not back. He's back, right?
Yep.
He's back. So you're starting right guard, whatever position he plays for them. He's back. Never heard anything about their right tackle. It's literally just a left tackle. That's the only quote unquote blemish. Other than that, Aaron Rodgers rarely gets hit. He will get rid of the ball. Before you.
Well, when he does, you kind of hold your breath, though. When he does, you kind of hold your breath a little bit.
So and Izzy brought up their offense. Garrett Wilson, right? CJ Johnson's gone. So one of their best defensive playmakers, he's gone. So Darius Slay gonna have his hands full with one of them receivers. CJ Uzomah at the tight end spot. They getting Breece Hall back, and you pair Breece Hall with Dalvin Cook and create that 1-2. Come on, man.
With Michael Carter Jr. too.
With that being said, I still think the Philadelphia Eagles can win that game. I'm predicting them to win the game. So they're 6-0. Miami comes to Philadelphia. I think they win that game.
Miami keep. Oh my God, bro! You are so disrespectful.
They can, but in Philadelphia, I think that's going to be a tough place to play.
I think Philly goes undefeated all the way to their bye week.
I think
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're 9-0 by the bye week, and then the three toughest games. They have a tough 3 game slate. I think they lose 2 out of 3 of those games. I think they lose in Arrowhead, and I think they lose to San Francisco.
Y'all are not. Y'all are overhyping them, bro. Like y'all just.
Based on the talent of the roster, the depth and the talent, there's no reason that this team shouldn't be 14-3, 14-15.
You're also asking dudes who didn't play a bunch last season on that defense to play a lot more. Kobe Dean being one of them. Yeah. You got to replace T.J. Edwards.
Jordan
Davis being another one. Jalen Carter being another one. Like I know I ranted and raved about them, but you were able to just come in periodically for a play or two here and there. Now it's all on you. So don't act like you got it's again. Sidney Brown's probably replacing Gardner Johnson at the safety spot. That's a rookie. That's a rookie.
Based on their depth chart right now, they did sign Terrell Edmonds from the Pittsburgh Steelers. A Breed Blankenship also as a free agent. Those guys will probably be their starting strong and free safety.
Who I don't have a lot of confidence in. Be real.
Is he got a whole bunch of background noise?
I don't know what you're doing about that.
Yeah.
So they will have they got 2 games back to back. That's tough. The Jets and the Dolphins. That's tough. We not finna act like that speed in Miami is not finna give them hella problems. We don't do that. You got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill who you can't press. You got to give them at least 8 to 10 yards of cushion.
But I think Jalen Hurts.
Also imagine Jalen Ramsey will be back at that point.
Yeah. I'm assuming. We're assuming. But I think Jalen Hurts, he's gonna look at that man across the field.
And they got
this me.
Hey, and what also the acquisition that they made mid-season last year, he's had a full off season with them now. He's had a full training camp with them now. We ain't finna act like Bradley Chubb ain't finna raise hell down there for them now. Last season,
but they're coming into Philly though. What
does that mean?
I mean, it's a tough place to play. Anytime you go
it's a tough place to play. You got them damn root fans that are just going crazy.
All the Eagle fans, dude.
All the Eagle fans, they're like the most obnoxious fan base in the NFL, possibly. It's a difference from playing in Philadelphia to Miami.
Green Bay Packer fans.
Oh, don't even put us in the same class as Philadelphia Eagles fans. But okay, carry on.
You got two tough matchups early. You got the Jets and Dolphins back to back. Then you follow it up with a tough matchup against Dallas. That's always a tough matchup. Then you get your bye. And then after the bye, that is a gauntlet. I don't care what y'all say.
I'm looking at that Seattle game too.
It's 7. It's 8 out of the last 7 games were all against playoff.
That's a gauntlet.
I'm looking at Seattle. That's a tough place to play late in the season. Geno Smith, resurgence. He ain't no slouch. I mean, you got to prove it to me again. But I think he's here to stay. The good place here to stay. He's in a perfect offense, perfect situation. That's tough. And they hungry. Seattle's hungry. They're out there to prove. That they're the player in the NFC, and I think that their defense is going to be pretty good this year as well. I honestly have the Philadelphia Eagles going 13-4 this year.
They get they running back. Kenneth Walker, he come back. And who do you add to Tyree? Who do you add to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf? I don't know. Oh, just Jackson Smith and Jigba. What did he do in college?
Adding Jackson Smith and Jigba is everything.
She did spend a lot of time injured in college,
and you add Devon Witherspoon to an already good second.
Man, I know, man. Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm gonna say Seattle's gonna be a tough team to play
with an excellent offensive line.
We'll talk about it.
Bookend by 2 great rookie right and left tackles.
Like I was saying, the Jets. The Dolphins, they gonna split with Dallas, Kansas City, Buffalo. San Fran's gonna have a quarterback this time. It's not gonna be McCaffrey being the Wildcat.
Or Brock Purdy basically playing with no arm whatsoever.
With no arm.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what that situation is gonna look like, but I mean, there were some moments that Trey Lance was exceptional.
Stop lying.
No, there were a couple moments. There were a couple moments where
he wasn't getting sacked 5 times in the game.
He looked he looked so phenomenal in spots that Shanahan basically came out and said that Brock Purdy is the starter. He literally said that today. Purdy's the starter.
Anyways, I have Philadelphia Eagles finishing with a 13-4 record. I have them as the best team in the NFC East. I think they should
13-4. Mark them down for me too.
12-5.
They should be the best team in the NFC East, and they should be a team that comes out of the NFC. They're loaded from top to bottom.
Because I'm not like y'all just downplaying this schedule. Like, oh, these guys. Like, no, that is a gauntlet of a schedule. That is tough. It is tough.
I mean, that's the big difference between playing what was a second place schedule last season and playing a first place schedule this year. You get every team that won their division last year, and this is what you deal with.
The Eagles fans out there talking about, if Jalen Hurts' shoulder didn't get messed up, we the won the Super Bowl. Well, if Brock Purdy's elbow doesn't explode on him, you probably don't even win the NFC championship. It's like, you see how, like, if you want to play that game, we can play that game. But like, that's not that's like you can play the what ifs all you want.
But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. This has been our Philadelphia Eagles season preview. Thank you very much for joining us here. Like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, as we now only have 8 teams to go before the start of the National Football League season in 2023. We're going to swing into the NFC West next and talk about the Los Angeles Rams. Let me make sure that's correct, actually, right quick. I don't remember what the standings are. But it'll be the Rams or the Cardinals. We'll do that show tomorrow.
I don't think it matters. I really don't think it matters.
It is the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals had the worst record in the second worst record in the NFC last year. We'll talk about them tomorrow.
That should be a 5-minute show. That should be a 5-minute show where we all just say trash, trash, trash. All right, end the show.
But yeah, we'll be back here tomorrow. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You all have a good night. Stay safe out there. And gentlemen, what do we do here at the Prime, my friend?
Bring the heat!
Yes, sir.
Bring the heat, baby!
Let's go. We'll be back here tomorrow. You all have a good night. Stay safe. Peace out.